Well, it was a great privilege last week to watch Pope Francis at World Youth Day. Of course, I wasn't there. I was in Madrid a couple years ago, but I couldn't make it this year. But I watched a lot of it on TV, and just to see him at work was an extraordinary thing. You know, the first thing that struck me was this. I go back now a ways with these World Youth Days, and I remember when John Paul Superstar was running World Youth Day. I mean, John Paul in his prime, when he was full of energy and he was singing with the kids and he was, gesturing and all this. And the kids responded with great enthusiasm. And I remember, let's say in Toronto 2002, when it was not John Paul Superstar anymore, it was this very infirm old man. And the young people responded with great enthusiasm. I remember Pope Benedict at Cologne in 2005. I remember I saw Pope Benedict in 2011 at Madrid, and the young people responded with great energy and enthusiasm. And I just saw Francis down in Rio, same thing. My point is, what I find fascinating, the kids aren't responding to an individual pope so much. Like, boy, they responded to John Paul, but not so much to Benedict. Or big change from Benedict to Francis. What I find interesting is the young people, and this is young people now over the past 28 years, have been responding to the Pope. Whether it's John Paul Superstar, John Paul infirm old man, Benedict staid scholar, Francis, charismatic figure. They respond to the Pope. Tu es Petrus, we say about the Pope. You are Peter. And it's a very strange thing. He's not just, the latest in a long line of these bishops of Rome. There's a mystical sense in which the current Pope, whoever he is, participates in the person and office of Peter, the one to whom Jesus gave the keys. And it's that the young people are responding to. And they're not simply the victims of the press or of the personality or whatever. They are responding to this mystical fact that the Pope is Peter. I thought that was really interesting. Now, to get though to Francis specifically, I think what Pope Francis emphasizes over and over again is the missionary identity of the church. And here he shows himself a true son of Vatican II. That was Vatican II's emphasis. The church needs to get out behind its own walls. That idea goes way back. It goes back to the 50s. You heard it in people like Hans Urs von Balthasar. Then it's very much present in John the 23rd, Paul VI, the fathers of Vatican II, to get out behind the walls of the church so as to flood the world with Christ. The church has a missionary purpose and identity. Once we get that, I think a lot of Francis' statements make sense and they find their right interpretation. For example, the famous one where he said, and the English translation was, make a mess, he said to the young Argentine kids. And again, the Spanish idiom, I don't know exactly what it was, but it's been translated different ways. Stir things up, get busy, get to it, See, it's right in line with this idea. Don't stay calmly behind the walls of the church or of the parish or of your institutions. Rather, get out. Stir things up in the world because your job is to Christify the world. Think outside the box of a staid institutionalism because the church is not there primarily to maintain itself as an institution. It's there to Christify the world, to be a missionary force. Think too of his critique of Pelagianism. Of course, that's that old view going back to the time of Augustine. Pelagius, who said we can save ourselves through our own efforts. The Pope here is critiquing the view today that we can save the church if we tinker with enough things in the institution. Now, whether that's from a left-wing perspective, a right-wing perspective, a centrist perspective, it doesn't matter. If we think fussing with the institution above all is going to save us, we're mistaken. What will save us is a trusting surrender to the Holy Spirit who sends us out to Christify the world. So it's not a self-correcting institutionalism that will save us, but it's a trust in the providence of the Holy Spirit. Relatedly, he said, don't reduce things to sociology or psychology. And I think here's what he meant. don't read the church exclusively or primarily through a sociological, political lens. Now, again, whether it's of left or right, if you say what the Christian message is finally all about is making the world better through a Marxist revolution, or making the world better through the spreading of liberal capitalism. Well, I mean, we can debate those till the cows come home, but that's not the church's meaning or purpose. What the church is about is its mission, is to go out to the world and to bring Christ to people. By the same token, the Pope said, don't reduce the church to psychological categories. We find this maybe more in the West. To read the gospel as a self-help program, is improving ourselves through greater self-knowledge, self-acceptance, a sort of psychological, cosmetic approach. That isn't it either. The great figures don't focus on themselves or on their psychological health. They forget about that. And in fact, they find psychological health precisely by forgetting themselves and going out on mission. Here's a last one that I was very struck by. The Pope talked about clericalization. And we can say, that priests should not be focused on their careers and on, their status and all that. And that's true. And he certainly has made that clear. But he specified in Rio, it was the clericalization of the laity. See, that's a huge problem after Vatican II. We convinced way too many lay people that they are really involved in the church when they get involved in their parish, or they get involved in some program, or some parochial ministry. Now, I'm not bad-mouthing any of that. All that has its place. But that was not the Vatican II vision of the laity. The Vatican II vision was informed by the liturgy, informed through good catechesis, informed by good teaching. The laity now go out to make a mess, right? To stir things up, to be great Catholic lawyers, great Catholic politicians, great Catholic business leaders, great Catholic writers, great Catholic parents and homemakers, great Catholic husbands and wives. Go out, make a mess, stir things up, Christify the world. What we don't want is primarily to draw the laity within the structures of the church as though that's the answer. That might have a role to play, sure. But parishes don't exist for themselves, just as dioceses don't exist for themselves. The universal church does not exist for itself. It exists to transform the world, to be a missionary presence. None of this is new. I want to make that point clearly. None of this is new with Pope Francis. This is all the teaching of Vatican II. But I think the particular charisma of Pope Francis is that he's gotten this. And he sees the danger that comes from this church turned in on itself, fussing with its interior life. No. The church has this extroverted purpose, if you want, to go out and make disciples of all the nations, which was the motto of this World Youth Day. I like too when he said, Jesus did not say, if you got time, go out and make disciples. Or if you got nothing else to do, go out and make disciples. It was a solemn command given to the disciples and through them now to all their successors, which means priests and bishops, yes, but it means all the baptized. Go out and make disciples. Go out and make a mess. Stir things up. Get busy. I think that was the particular charisma that Pope Francis brought. And you saw how the world responded to it with extraordinary enthusiasm. That was a wonderful thing to see.